What's up, everybody? Welcome to Four Nations Week. It is officially the Four Nations break. This is Morning Cup of Hockey presented by Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. So use our code NATION, NATION, in all caps. It is the worst day of the calendar year, Super Bowl Monday. That's Colby Cohen. I'm Johnny Lazarus. If you're like me and you took the Eagles you took the Chiefs last night, it's a tough morning, a tough day to wake up for. An ugly Super Bowl. The Kendrick Lamar fan base is in my mentions. They are all over me this morning. But Colby, you are an Eagles fan. How you feeling this morning waking up a Super Bowl champion?
Well, I'm certainly not a Super Bowl champion, so let's be clear about that.
All right, mister, I can't have any fun.
Why is Super Bowl Monday the worst day of the year? I'm unaware of why.
You eat, you drink, you hang out. It should be a national holiday this day. It's one of the oldest debates of all time. Everyone is a little bit sluggish the Monday morning after the Super Bowl. You hang out with friends, you drink, you eat. It's like a little Thanksgiving, little party night. Everyone's saying I'm looking rough and I'm feeling rough. That's for sure. J-Rock saying, "Wait, Johnny lost a bet? No surprise." Yes,
I'll be honest with you. That was the moment I felt really good about the fact that the Eagles were going to win. When I saw you tweet why you were picking the Chiefs or something like that to win the game, immediately I said, "Oh wow, the Eagles might actually win this football game because Johnny is betting on the Chiefs to win." So it was great to see that so early in the day to get a confidence boost. But listen, I'll tell you what, I don't think anybody really enjoyed that game other than Philadelphia Eagles fans because it wasn't exactly a good game. It wasn't a close game.
Look who's in the chat, Colby.
He isn't. I talked to Vic yesterday. We had a pretty long conversation yesterday, which I know is probably going to hurt your feelings.
Wow.
On to you.
Well, Amanda was damning me from her account. I don't know if it was Vic.
Not very happy with you, by the way. Amanda's not very happy with you because she was there too, and I talked to Vic. So you've managed to damper their honeymoon. So way to go. But look, the football game was the football game. The Eagles completely dominated. The halftime show had to be the worst halftime show I can ever remember or I've ever seen.
Really?
Could not have been less entertained by that halftime show. I know you felt the same way. You had to put it on Twitter, right?
Yeah, I was not a fan of Kendrick Lamar's halftime performance. I mean, listen, I'm not a Kendrick Lamar hater, but I just don't think you're reaching the mass audiences with a guy like Kendrick Lamar doing the halftime show. I think it's a very niche rap audience that, if you're doing the Super Bowl, it should be someone who's more, I guess, globally popular. Maybe that's just my opinion, and maybe I'm wrong for saying that, but I think there are a lot of people who agree with me versus the opposite opinition. So
yeah, listen, have your own opinion.
Yeah.
No problem.
You're a Kendrick fan. You loved it.
My opinion is that the halftime show is absolutely horrible. You have a guy who's just up there mumbling. You can barely understand anything that he says. Listen,
it was cool. Serena Williams was up there though. That was pretty cool.
Rap just doesn't come across that great live. So if it's not going to be Eminem or it's not going to be 50 Cent or Jay-Z, somebody that is just so, world renowned, I agree. Give me,
I don't think Lil Wayne would have been any better for whatever.
Give me Shakira again all day. Give me Justin Timberlake. Give me any of the legends that have performed there. So whoever picked the Super Bowl halftime show should probably be fired today. It's you had one job. So,
wow.
Get that right. So, other than that, listen, I haven't seen anything on the news today. I hope the city of Philadelphia is still standing. You know how Eagles fans are. You know how Philadelphia sports fans are. They like to have fun and they like to celebrate when they win and they like to be destructive. So I'm sure a lot of that happened last night in the city of Philadelphia. So I'm sure we'll read all about it on social media today.
Yeah, I mean, it's listen, we're talking football, whatever. We'll get into some hockey. Happy for Eagles fans, even though I think they're one of the most annoying fan bases on the planet. But seeing Patrick Mahomes losing the Super Bowl, I don't know how I feel about it. I was obviously rooting for greatness. I wanted to see the three-peat for the first time in NFL history, but it seems like a lot of people want to see the downfall of Patrick Mahomes. And I guess I have to be okay with that as someone who's not a big NFL fan. I don't know if you have any thought on that, or we can just kind of jump into Billy Jaffe, who's sitting here
Yeah,
waiting to join the
I
show.
think that's, listen, it wasn't that exciting. So
Yep.
good for the Eagles, but I'd rather spend some time talking to Billy about the NHL and the Bean Pot and the Four Nations tournament and the Boston Bruins.
All right, so before we bring on Billy Jaffe, just want to give a quick word from our sponsor, Proraso, the most complete choice for shaving and beard care. Made in Italy since 1948, Proraso has been a staple of Italian culture and barbershops globally for 4 generations. So get 15% off at Proraso-USA.com with our promo code Hockey15 in all caps, Hockey15. And let's bring on Billy Jaffe because we got a lot to get to with him today. Probably one of the busier guys in all of hockey today. We didn't even mention that it's the Beanpot Championship Monday. So, Billy, what do you got going on today? You're in your pregame gitch, it looks like, in the Under Armour. You just get back from a workout or something?
No, I actually need to go downstairs and get into a workout. I've got Cooper sunning himself to the left of me over here. He's in my my office chair as he watches me go through the notes of BC and BU and some highlights, and then we got a Four Nations and then show before as well to record for Nesson. But yeah, no, I'm great. I'm just listening to you guys. I couldn't agree more about the Super Bowl. Like anything but super. But I know, like, listen, good for Philly fans. Like I couldn't care. I love. Look, I'm a Pats fan for obvious reasons, but on the other hand, the game itself was boring.
Yeah. Listen,
Anyway.
like I said, unless
you can't control that.
Unless you're an Eagles fan, you were bored last night. I mean, that's just the bottom line. I mean, I felt very good with
or a gambler.
Yeah.
They did get the over though with those touchdowns at the end of the game. It's unbelievable. But let's start with the Bean Pot, Billy, because it is Monday, first two Mondays in February. I think especially this year, just because the NHL is on hiatus at this point. Maybe the Bean Pot will have a little bit, of a bigger audience. You'll be able to catch that game if you're in New England on Nesson. If you're out of New England, you watch that game on ESPN Plus. You can hear Billy and the great Tom Caron. They're like the odd couple on there. Great broadcast. Like you guys,
the odd couple, the old couple.
Well, either way, that was the only negative of me coming up to the Bean Pot last Monday was I didn't get to hear you and TC and Tom Caron talk about the best in the nation, all throughout the game. But what are you expecting tonight, Billy? Like, it just seems like Ryan Leonard is too good to lose a big hockey game right now. And I've got my BU hat on today for obvious reasons, but call a spade a spade. This kid is just on a different level than everybody else.
He's on a different level. To your point about losing game, I mean, he's a game winner. He's got 8 game-winning goals this year too. I mean, leading the nation.
Yeah,
speaking of best in the nation, right? Most shots on goal per game. Most goals in the nation. So he is definitely the engine that locomotives this team. Like he absolutely does. He's ferocious. However, Colby, what I will say about that is this. He's better because of Gabe Perreault, of Teddy Stiga, James Hagens. But I actually think he's even more because of when Andre Gasso, who's a big left shot centerman, 6'4", 225.
Bruins pick, right?
Bruins pick a couple of years ago, California kid. And then there's another Bruins pick, coincidentally, Oscar Jelvik.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's nasty.
When he's playing with those guys, and when they're going, that's big. And I'm not putting all the pressure on them, but when they're going, now all of a sudden you've got not one, but 2 lines that are ultra high level. That tenderizes the opponent, whoever it is. And next thing you know, if they're not scoring, the 3rd and 4th lines are scoring. And they've been doing that the last few games. But with all that said, and I think, Colby, you'll appreciate this the most, being a former, well, you're still a defenseman. You're just an old defenseman. Is the D for Boston College is long, and their stick work is excellent. And so when you get all those together, that makes, and then you add the ultimate, I think the best player in college hockey in Ryan Leonard to the mix. You're like, how do you stop them? Right now, they're on such a roll, such a mission. They've never won this Bean Pot, though, this senior class. They have never, Eamon Paul has never been there.
Crazy. 5 years.
Exactly. So they're back. They feel like they're on a mission. I can't even believe I didn't bring up Jacob Fowler in net. So yeah, on paper it seems like a big win, possibility for a big win by BC. But on the other hand, you got this big Russian kid, Big Mike Yegorov, in net for you. I mean, who knows?
I know. Well, it is interesting to me that there's just like there's so much future NHL talent in this game. I mean, guys who you're be making good bets to bet on that they're going to play in the National Hockey League. And I'm gonna we'll talk more Ryan Leonard, because I am curious to hear how you think he'll fit into the NHL playoffs this year. But before we do it, Drew Fortescue is a guy who, if I'm a Rangers fan, I am taking it to the bank that this guy is going to play for them. Like I am rarely so sure about a prospect that's not like jumping off the page at you like a Ryan Leonard does every shift. But you watch Drew Fortescue and he just screams NHL defenseman. He screams National Hockey League defenseman to me.
Yeah, I think they've got a couple of guys like that, but Drew is right there in the sense of seemingly in the right position a lot of the time, right? Good footwork. I mean, just an overall defenseman that you say, all right, maybe at the next level, it translates more to this than that, meaning more simple. Who the hell cares? You need simple stay-at-home defensemen. And I don't mean that doesn't mean he doesn't have some skill. Doesn't mean that he doesn't have some creativity, but that's not his number one quality. His quality is just being that defenseman that after a game, you sit there and you say, I don't hate him because he beat me, with 2 goals and an assist. I hate him because he stopped me from scoring. I hate him because every time I thought I had him beat, he was there. I hate him because, as an opponent, and then after the game, you shake his hand and you got to tip your helmet and say, good game. Really good game. I love the way he plays Minetti, and I like the way he plays lately.
He's really good, Minetti.
He's really good.
4th round pick by Dallas. He's another guy who looks like he'll play. Again, Minetti, he doesn't score a lot, right? But he's involved. He had a great shot in the semi game, but he's physical. Yeah, Johnny. He's just so. I just think the D probably gets overshadowed, and understandably so, because you've got this D-core in the country. Yeah,
you got this unbelievable up front crew, but then also you got this all hockey NCAA all hockey goalie in Fowler. So you kind of forget about the D in between. And if they don't have their sticks, their great sticks for gaps, and their transitional game going, which they do, you know what I mean? You kind of look past them, but they've been great.
But do you think this is the Big Mike show? Like, I haven't been able to watch a lot of him, Yegorov, for BU. I know he's played 4 games, has only allowed like 6 goals in his first 4 games in college.
1 even strength goal, Johnny. 1.
Yeah, and he's an 18-year-old who came in halfway through. Like, you don't see this happen ever, I feel like, for a goalie. Like, I know players come in at Christmas and they have to fill some spots, but when have we really seen a goalie step into college halfway through and actually take the net? Like, this is the first
that's the
I've really heard of it.
I see it often, Johnny, but it's rare that it's a starter.
Yeah. Like, I have not seen this ever, and I think that's something that will be highlighted a lot tonight. And I think this kid could steal a game.
Let's go even further. It's rare that it's an 18-year-old goalie coming in, okay, even as a backup. All right. It's rare that any 18-year-old comes in anymore. And it's rare that you give him the net right away. But after they brought him in, they had to have him in by January 22nd for NCAA rules, just how it worked, because that was the first day of class, I think, or before for BU next semester. He had to be registered by that, and he was. He comes from Omaha. If folks don't know the story out there, the long story short is this: Omaha in the USHL, I'm told, an absolute mess this year, and coaches fired, etc. Between BU wanting to bring in a goalie and also the New Jersey Devils wanting his development to be better, they bring him in early to BU. He was already committed to BU. It was just going to be when, right? And he comes in this year. Okay. Long story short, again, they start playing him after the first BC game where they lose 6-2 at home. And the kid has got swagger. He has got, they call him Big Mike. He is absolutely, I haven't had a chance to sit and talk with him yet. I've seen him, and he is big. He's 6'5", pushing 6'6". Yeah, he's got great movement, though. His legs they're long, but they're not out of control. I haven't seen pucks really beat him through some goalies can be so big that they get beat through the body because they're other movement.
Big goalie. The guy,
exactly.
Fedotov, he's got holes everywhere, and he's a monster.
Exactly. So far, and I'm pumping brakes because this is college, not the NHL, but it's a big step up. And the kid, because of his mental makeup, is great. Here's a kid that is very bright too, right? And English is his second language. And he dove headfirst into, no, I want to take hardcore classes. I
I
mean,
saw that class schedule.
did you see that? Yeah, I mean, like
did.
we put it up on Nesson the other night, and one class that he has that I'd like to participate in is the Intro to Hospitality. That must be, he's heading over to Tees, if it's still around over there across the street. That must be the Intro to Hospitality. Were you a hospitality major?
Yeah, I was too. Yeah, I spent a lot of time in the hospitality ventures in and around campus. Look,
to me, that's spending night at the bars, though, Johnny. That's what it is.
It's going to be a great game. The building is going to be packed. If you live in New England, get on Nesson. If you're not, get on ESPN Plus. It's a great display of what college hockey is about.
One thing out there, Colby?
Yeah.
It's on the NHL Network too, outside of.
Oh, it is?
Oh, wow.
Oh,
okay.
great.
It is.
Maybe it's not ESPN Plus then if it's on NHL Network. So maybe I'm wrong on that one. So
it's not just throwing it out there. It's NHL Network Championship. They've been doing it last couple of years. It still could be on the Plus though, as well. I don't know.
We'll look into that, but that's a good little assist there, and it's good to know. All right, I want to change the part of, well, sure, the game will be at the Garden tonight, so let's stay at the Garden now, Billy, and let's talk about the multi-billion-dollar franchise that plays out of the Garden. And look, I said to Jonny a couple of weeks ago that I still thought the Boston Bruins, the way Pasta was playing, they do have a good goaltender. They've got some guys that I think are going to go and maybe get a boost from playing in the Four Nations Cup and then come back and be even better. I still think they're going to find their way into a wild card spot. I'm not feeling as good about that right now. But so let me kick it over to you. You're with this team. You're around this team. You work on television covering this team. What is your confidence level that the Boston Bruins will find their way into the playoffs this year?
I'm mixed. I'm not as confident as I was going into the Christmas break. I was feeling much better about them. They went in on a big high, and they came out of the break after 3.5 days off, 3 days basically, and not the same. They weren't able to continue that elevation, that elevated play. They are with an absolute mosh pit of teams that are crashing into each other regularly. Every team's got games in hand on them. Now, games in hand are great if you win games in hand. Right? That's the thing. But they're going to be battling. Now, there's a couple of teams that I think will drop off. The question is, are the Bruins one of them? If they don't get their structure, their defensive middle of the ice structure, and their special teams worked out, especially they're both special. They've lost their last couple of games because of special teams battles they've lost, Cole. So, I just don't, if they don't get that straightened out, I think it's going to be hard for them to make the playoffs. And I'm sure you've talked about it on your show before when Cam Neely talked about 2 paths for this team, right? In the next couple of weeks. I mean, he said it a couple of weeks ago at the Bruins Foundation event when asked by the media, 2 paths. If we're playing well, do we look to help out and add? They're not going to go crazy but do we look to help out and add? Or if not, do we take the other path? And the other path is, do we start moving assets to regain current assets to gain stuff for the future? The last couple of games, it doesn't feel like when it's all said and done, they're close but guys. They're close but regularly. And again, I go back to this. They can't get the special teams and their structured defense going. It's going to be very tough for them.
Well, can I say something that I think maybe isn't getting picked up nationally that I do see coming from Boston Bruins fans, but the Bruins are boring. We talk about boring teams in the NHL, and I feel like they're never in that category just because they have Pasta and they have Marchand, and they do have a lot of personalities. But the way they played, that Bruins-Rangers game, Billy, last week was one of the most boring hockey games I have ever been to in my entire life. Yeah, both teams were awful. But the Bruins writers I was sitting next to also were like, oh, this is just Boston Bruins hockey. It's boring right now, the way they're playing.
It's the way they have to play, Johnny. That's the thing, because they knew that they were going to kind of struggle offensively this year to get going. They thought that they had addressed some issues to help the depth, the size, and then add later in the year, right? Hopefully first of all, they hope for certain guys to be scoring more, right?
Yeah.
They're not. We know that. But then they said, we'll get through that, and then hopefully we can add. I don't know if they were ever thinking about a blockbuster trade, but they were going to wait to see what they could add and who would develop and who isn't. Now, with that said, they've been playing a much more dump and chase, and it really hasn't been dump and recover. It's been more of a dump and chase type of game.
Yeah.
It got better under Joe Sacco for a while when they started to do things a little more shot volume versus shot quality. However, it's a hard way to have to play. I think you can do it in a short term and do it real well, because you start getting teams that are like, oh man, these guys are working their butts off and they're this and they're that. But meanwhile, it's hard to do over an 82 game season the way that to play right now. And you know what? The regular season, when you're high level skill guys, and you guys know this wonderfully well, that's when they score, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's come playoff time that you need those grinders and be able to play that way. The problem is you need to get into the playoffs and then have enough of those players that are willing to do that stuff.
But there's one thing I wanted to add, Colby, just to add on quickly. We had Brant Berglund on here, who does NHL edge and tracking data with the NHL. And one stat that really stood out to me was when he said there were like 9 out of the 10 teams that made the playoffs last year that were in the top 10 in the NHL. 9 of them had a better ice tilt, than all their opponents throughout. I guess it was north of 30 minutes, their ice tilt. The way they played, they had the puck on their stick. The game was like in their favor.
Makes sense.
For most of the game. The Bruins were the only team that did not have that, out of the top 10. And I think the Bruins, maybe Swayman's play last year, we took for granted a little bit, and it overshadowed a lot of these issues that we're seeing now, because Swayman maybe isn't playing up to what he was last year.
And Ullmark last year. You had both.
Yeah.
You had both, and you had other players, and your point is valid, and Brant, who's awesome. Mm-hmm. I mean, those are significant numbers. See, I'm good with analytics. Mm-hmm. Some of them I think are too much, like anything, right?
Yeah.
That's a great number, though. When you look at that, you understand the simplicity of that number. I think it's a beautiful thing. It
Agreed.
Clarifies things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's exactly what it sounds like. And anytime you can look at something and by the name of it go, oh, wait, yeah, I know what that means. I could surmise what that means. It's probably a healthy stat.
Exactly. Anything expected. I'm telling you, I start breaking out those expected this, the expected all that. Oh my God, I start breaking out in a sweat like I'm back at college and I missed and I have a final and I never studied for it all year. When I'm like, I don't understand it at all. I mean, listen though, the Bruins got rid of some all I got to do is think of Jake DeBrusk not being back. Now, they had that choice to make, and they let him go, but they had that. They still didn't have the puck as much last year, but between their team defense and between their goaltending, they were able to handle it. And the other thing was, too, it was attitude. And I think this year they have a lot of different personalities on the team. People think it's the same team back except for DeBrusk. No, that couldn't be further from the truth. It's been a ton of guys, which takes time for the guys to kind of get, acclimated, but also it's a lot of different personalities. And I think that's been a factor for this team too. So
we've kind of talked a little bit about, some of the overall themes. Well, let me just ask you a follow-up on like the Cam Neely comments, right? Because I feel like we always see these GMs come out. We saw it with Barry Trotz when he was threatening a rebuild. And then we looked at their cap situation and their contract situation. We kind of laughed and rolled our eyes because we said, yeah, I think that's a little bit of an empty threat. When I look at the Bruins situation, like obviously Hampus Lindholm is not playing right now. So they have all this money in cap space, which you and I know is not real because he's on LTIR. But contractually here, let's call the Bruins sellers, right? What does that really mean? Because the only guy I see here with real value that you'd be willing to trade would be Trent Frederick, right? You're not going to trade Brad Marchand, who's a UFA. And the other guys that their contracts are up, you're talking about Parker Wotherspoon, you're talking about Cole Koepke, Justin Brazeau. You're not, and then there's a couple of RFAs, which, Oliver Wahlstrom, John Beecher, like, there's not a lot of value in a lot of these guys, Billy. So, I'm curious, like, what does sellers look like for the Boston Bruins?
So it's a valid question because that one free agent is Frederick, right? Pops out at you, but it's not 3 guys where you think the traditional seller's market.
Yeah.
You could be looking at guys with a little term left on their contract.
Got
you
it.
could, and you could be looking at, on the one, I'll throw out the name Morgan Geekie, who first part of the year was a healthy scratch at least 4, if not 5 times. He struggled to start. He admitted it. Didn't know why after such a great year last year. For him, great year, meaning a career year. But he's been going lately. Not even lately. He's been going for a while now. And along with Pasternak and Zaka, he's developed, continued some great chemistry. I mean, Colby, are we at the time of the year where you just have to listen to everything?
Yeah.
And therefore, that becomes, you maybe become a seller more than you realize, because all of a sudden somebody says, hey, I need a player like that, or I need this type of player. And, he's got a year left on a contract. Okay, I'm even better with that. And that puts the team back more.
Like a Charlie Coyle, like a Charlie Coyle, maybe, who after this year only has 1 year left. And, maybe it's a situation where you're like, okay, maybe you get a third party broker involved and you get Charlie Coyle at a discount. And then you put Charlie Coyle on your third line for $2.5 million. And then you're in business if you're a contender.
And and you have him for another year, and so there's all that stuff. There's those possibilities. And I do think, I mean, they have to be thinking like that as one. They're not going to blow it up. They are not. You don't blow up the team when you have the elements already around there that you have building blocks. The Pasternaks, the Swaymans, who's been riding up and down, been better, but the McAvoys, etc. Guys, you can't blow it up. Do you retool? Absolutely, and that means you're going to have to make. I'd be very, if they choose to start being sellers, I'd be very surprised. We call it a hockey trade. They're all hockey trades, but you know it. I'd be surprised if one of those isn't seriously considered or isn't almost, if not pulled off, almost pulled off by them.
What's the culture like this year, though? Does it feel a lot different than years past? I know, obviously,
different.
Yeah,
it does. They've had so much leadership over the years that have been, and I'm not even talking about guys like Bergeron and Chara. I'm talking the other players.
Names like Maroon, those guys last year.
I mean, go back go Torrey Krug when he was around. I mean, he was a catalyst from the back end on the power play, but he also had that panache, that pizzazz, that charisma for a guy to help lead the way. Kevin Miller, a guy that was an enormous leader, literally and figuratively, for them. David Krejci was, sometimes surly. I mean, I loved him. You didn't know it, but you know what I mean? Like, he was quiet but around us, but then other times, you know what I mean? He was this blunt force. And I think that type of secondary leadership is missing from this.
Yeah.
They redevelop leaders on this team.
Yeah. They had Reamer and Shaddy in there last year. Adam McQuaid, Joe Albanese just popped in the chat. There's a reason Adam McQuaid has a job with the organization still, because he is the best. Exactly. Like, it's a good point. Like, I didn't even think of Torrey. I didn't even think of Mills. Both guys I spent quite a bit of time with down in the minors, and those guys just had a presence, right? Like, they were never needed to be Patrice Bergeron or Zdeno Chara, but they had a presence with themselves. So, look, Billy, we're only going to keep you for here another minute. We've got Kenny Albert getting ready to jump on the line.
Hall of Famer.
Yeah, Hall of Famer. That's right. But I had a couple of things, like, I wanted to ask you about Lohrei and Patra and like their development, but we've kind of run out of time. And the other thing I wanted to ask you about was what your expectation is like for Brad Marchand's contract. So, of those three topics that I just threw your way, which one would you say is the most interesting? Like, because we're not going to have time to get into all three.
Well, if we're gonna talk about Bruins development, I think Lohrei and Patra have to be discussed. All right, Lohrei is going to be feast or famine sometimes. You have to love the kid's confidence, willingness, and mostly ability, especially with the puck at the offensive blue line down low. He's excellent there. He's got so much confidence to do things. On the other hand, he still makes some plays you're going to have to live with. We saw it a couple of games ago against Winnipeg, where he tried to come right out from behind the net to the front of the net, had it stripped by Nick Ehlers. But if the Bruins are going to get better, he's going to have to elevate his game. He doesn't have to be a shutdown defenseman that rules the world in his own zone and beats you up. You know, he doesn't have to be Kenny Danigal back there, but he's got to be more solid. You know what I mean? He's going to have to learn that game. Matt Patra comes up. And so Cole and Johnny, I mean, if this team is going to make some moves and they want to keep him and they want to get better, can he fill at least that third line center spot? I think so. Is he big and physical? No, he's not. So should he be more of a second line center? He's only 20 years old. And, you know, we want the answers right now. I think sometimes we have to take a deep breath and give it a year or two more. Let's see where he ends up. But those two guys, if the Bruins are going to be successful with even a retool, if they go down that road, they're going to need those two guys to be successful for them in the next year or two.
Just my last thing, Billy, wondering what you have planned for Four Nations. If you're going to Montreal, obviously you will be in Boston. What do you got?
I will be in Boston. No, I'm not going to Montreal. In fact, I'm going to Austin, Texas tomorrow, which I've never been to. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to one of my dear best friends from growing up, long story short, lives there. I'm going to visit him for 4 days and then I'm back. So I'm going to watch Four Nations from down there, but I am going to be working in Boston for the NHL Network on site, reporting, interviewing, hanging out, watching the Four Nations Monday and Thursday.
Well, what do you have planned in Austin? It's like my favorite city in the country.
I'm gonna eat.
His trip to Austin probably looks a little different than your trip to Austin.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I've become this old fart, which stinks. Yeah. I mean, and so now
literally and figuratively.
I would love to see Billy Jaffe at Matt's El Rancho on 2 knockout martinis. They literally limit the customers to 2. They won't let you have more than 2. It's like the strongest.
Really?
Or is it margarita? Yeah, knockout margarita. The strongest margarita I've ever had in my life, and they won't let you order more than 2.
All right.
So if you get a chance to go to Matt's El Rancho, you got to go.
Matt's all right. Well, my buddy knows it down there, and actually, his kids live down there, so I'm sure they'll take us out and they'll parade us around like little figurines. Like, oh, look at these old guys with us at the bar here, you know. And barbecue.
You're gonna love it.
I'm sure Cooper will be staying at the Four Seasons or the Ritz-Carlton somewhere while you're on your vacation, Billy.
Well, actually, I'm going sans family, so it's really it's so Cooper's going to be stuck at home, you know, with the kids who promise to take care of him all the time. And
I know you're his keeper. I know you're his keeper. Cooper is Billy Jaffe's golden retriever. It's just to give you guys a little context. So, all right, so you can always see Billy on Nesson. You can always see Billy on NHL Network, and you can download and listen to Billy and Andrew Raycroft, who you guys all know from coming on this show on Morning Brew, which you know might have been a little bit of the inspiration for our show. Morning Brew. You guys had the theme first, and we have to give you a little bit of love. We borrowed some inspiration from you when we named this show. You're a pioneer.
High form of flat. We appreciate it. Thank you very much, and I'm glad it worked out to be on with you guys. This morning. I wasn't sure if I had a production meeting or not. We don't. So thanks for having me on. Have a wonderful break. Will I see either of you in Boston or no?
Not me. No, maybe John.
I might be there. I'll definitely be in Montreal. Boston's still 50-50.
Will you make it to the games, Johnny, in Montreal? Like that's where I had one of my bachelor parties. Yeah, it was phenomenal. Yeah, it was. And it's not what you think. It's not what you like. It was nothing. It was just unbelievable. 2 full nights in Montreal, which was, you know, thankfully the 5-6 guys that I was with, everybody made it home. It was great.
Yeah. Nate Thompson said he's going to show me around. So excited to see what Nate's got in store for me.
Wonderful.
We'll see. It's a good one. It's a good one. All right. Billy, have a great trip out west. We'll hear you. We look forward to seeing you and hearing you on the Bean Pod tonight, and bring my Terriers some luck.
They're going to need a little bit of luck, but they've got some high offensive players themselves. Cole Hudson, Quinn Hudson, pretty darn, and Ryan Green. Love the kid. See you guys.
All right, Billy.
Thanks, Billy. Good luck tonight. All right, so we're going from one friend of the show to the next. Let's bring on our friend Kenny Albert. We got a busy show today. Kenny, one of the busiest guys, obviously, in the business, but is tonight the last night of work for you before you get a little bit of a break? What's going on? The Knicks play tonight, and then did they play tonight? They do, right?
Traveled today. Actually traveled today with the Knicks for a game in Indiana tomorrow, back for a home game on Wednesday, and then off for a couple of days before heading up to Boston for the 2 games next Monday. Great to be with you guys, by the way.
Yeah, always great to have you on here. But what are you going to do with your off days? I never hear of a Kenny Albert off day. I didn't know those existed.
I feel like you've had more in the last couple of months. You've had like 3 or 4 off days.
Well, once football ends, once the NFL regular season comes to an end, there are a few more off days here and there, guys. But no, today's a travel day, so it's an off day but a travel day, and then off Thursday and Friday. Head to Boston on Saturday. By the way, Colby, I was looking at my phone and pictures pop up, on this date in.
I know the one you're going to tell me. Yep.
So this week, 7 years ago, it's already been 7 years. We were together in Pyeongchang, South Korea, for the Winter Olympics 2018.
This picture right here, I don't know if anybody will be able to see it, popped up on my thing this morning. The 4 of us at that first practice in Korea, which was pretty cool. That was a great trip. I mean, we had so much fun. The hockey wasn't quite what I think we're going to see with 4 Nations and with Olympics next year. But it was we made the best of it, and we had a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. So many great memories. Hard to believe it's 7 years. The U.S. women winning the gold medal was certainly a highlight. Winning in the shootout against Canada. But the accommodations were great. The weather wasn't too bad. We got to watch a lot of hockey, and our booth on the TV side was right by where you were doing the games for Westwood One. So terrific memories from already 7 years ago, which is crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
So Billy, let me ask you this. Since we're talking international hockey with you, you've done quite a few of these. You've done Olympics. You've done this international thing. What is your expectations for this 4 Nations tournament? It's been a while since we saw best on best. The last 2 were not NHL players. Obviously the one we did in Korea, the one in China. So curious, is this going to be treated as an exhibition, or are the players, in your opinion, going to not know how to play in an exhibition style when they put on their country colors and those jerseys?
No, I get the feeling, from talking to some players and coaches and management types and reading a lot of their quotes. I think it's going to be, far from an exhibition. They really want to win. You read the comments from Line A couple of weeks ago, and then Hedman responds, and the U.S. and Canadian players, and they all want to win. I think it'll have a playoff or Olympic feel to it. And another part of it is looking ahead to the Olympics next year, a year from now in Milan. The players on all 4 rosters, they want to be a part of it next year, and there are players who aren't involved in the 4 Nations who will have an opportunity. So. I think that's certainly a big part of it as well.
Will you be doing those, Kenny? Do you know? I don't know if you can even say that or not, but because I know even since the NHL went to TNT, I've seen you doing Summer Olympic Games. I've seen you do all these other sports. I've seen you do water polo at the Summer Olympics, which is, I'll tell you, it's the only time I've ever watched water polo. But could we expect to see you in doing the games in the Italy Olympics?
Well, water polo was a lot of fun this past summer. It had the feel of hockey. There are a lot of the same terms. There are power plays throughout the game. I've been fortunate to be involved in the last 6 Winter Olympics, calling hockey for NBC. They usually, settle things officially, I would say about 6 to 8 months before. So it's a little too early to officially say anything, but hopefully that's certainly the plan next year in Milan. It's been an unbelievable experience. First had the opportunity in 2002. And Colby, I think I've told you the story, crazy circumstances when Doc Emmerich's dog got sick and he pulled out of the Salt Lake Olympics. He didn't want to leave his wife home with the sick dog for 3 weeks. So a week before, I remember during the St. Louis Rams New England Super Bowl, doing a lot of my prep, watching that Super Bowl, and I had just found out a day or 2 before that I would be heading to Salt Lake in a week. That was the first one. And then Torino, Vancouver, Sochi, Pyeongchang with you. And then 2022, we did it in Stamford, Connecticut remotely. So unbelievable experience all 6 times, and certainly look forward to hopefully being involved next year in Milan.
Kenny, obviously you do a lot of national broadcasts, so you always know how to play neutral, but when you are doing international play, is it hard not to be a homer? when you're calling Team USA hot. Like that's got to be. I imagine if a broadcaster is calling Team USA versus Canada, like that's got to be one of the harder ones to hide it.
Kenny's professional, Johnny.
I
know
know,
that's
but,
something
like,
hard
still,
for you to
even-
wrap
even
your
a
head
little bit.
around, but this
Even a
is
little bit.
professionalism. That's
Yeah,
why Kenny is the guy that he is.
I wouldn't say it's hard because I'm so used to it, calling, going back and forth between local and national games for so many years. So it's just one of those things you learn throughout the process, to call the games down the middle, neutral. It's funny working football all these years. There are no local broadcasts on the TV side during the NFL season. Everything's a national broadcast, but there are some fans that seem to think that you're rooting for their team or against their team, or your color analyst is rooting for or against their team. But I can tell you that's not the case. I've worked with Moose Johnston and Troy Aikman and now Jonathan Vilma and Rondé Barber. Even when the game's involving a team they played for, they're not rooting for or against the team. They're professionals. They're doing their job. And it's kind of funner to see some of those comments out there once in a while.
Kenny, the fans here in Philly think that Joe Buck and Troy Aikman are like so against the Eagles. And like, I'm like, these are two of the best broadcasters, period, in the world of broadcasting. Sure, Troy Aikman played for them, but like, if you're being objective about it, I totally agree with you. I think the whole Troy Aikman and Joe Buck hate the Eagles thing is silly in my opinion. These guys make $17 million a year. They root for ESPN. They that's who their fandom is with. The place that's sending them their $17 million a year. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, Kenny. And honestly, look, I've listened to you call Ranger games on the radio before, and you call those like they're happening, right? There's not, I mean, sure, is there more information in a radio broadcast from the home team? Yeah, but so let's talk about the Rangers a little bit since we have you, and obviously you do their radio, and I know you'll fill in and do TV every now and again as well, and I'm sure there could be more to come on that, but we talked about the Bruins with Billy Jaffe before you got on. You might have heard a little bit of it, and we talked about the buying versus selling mentality, and the Rangers sit in a very similar situation, right? They just made a big trade. They started out in one place. They had the epic meltdown that we all know. They've shooken things up since. What's your expectations for the rest of the season with the New York Rangers? Like, do you expect that they're a team that will be playing when the extra hockey starts here in the the end of the winter?
Yeah, I think so. I think they have a great shot to be one of those playoff teams. You look at the resiliency over this last 4-game stretch, coming back 3 times to win after trailing heading into the third period. And I was there in Columbus the other night, and they tied the game early in the third. The goal that was changed to Vakanainen, originally credited to Cooley, and then Cooley scores the game winner. That was a huge win. Because if Columbus wins that game, the separation's a lot bigger than it is heading into the Four Nations. But again, coming back down in the third period against Vegas, against Boston, and against Columbus in these last 4 games. And it's been such a strange year, as you alluded to. They start 12-4-1, and then you have that 4-15 stretch, and then the 10-game streak with a point. But I think there's definitely a positive vibe heading into the break. The trade has paid big dividends. You look at how guys like Zibanejad and Panarin have played since JT Miller has joined the team, and they shuffled up the lines the other night, and VZ playing on that top line had about 4 good scoring chances. Kaliev back in after he was a scratch for 4 games, scores a goal. I think the 2 defensemen they brought over, and I trust my partner Dave Maloney as much as anybody when dissecting what's going on with the Rangers. And during that the early portion of that 10-game point streak, he pointed out on numerous occasions on the air that Borgen and Vakanainen have really played well and helped settle things down on the back end. I think Keandre Miller's been really good over the last 4 or 5 games this recent stretch. Lindgren's been a lot better than what we saw when he came back from the injury early in the year. So I know I'm giving a long answer to a short question, but yes, I think they'll be there come playoff time.
Yeah, I'm curious what you've actually made of the Garden energy this year. It feels like it's been a bit off, like at home games. Last year, obviously, it felt like there was a little bit of magic, And this year, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's my own expectations, but the energy at MSG for Rangers games has been not what I'm used to. And I don't know if you catch that up in the booth as well.
No, I first of all, I have a headset on, so
True.
it's kind of hard for me to even kind of assess what's going on around me. But I think, during that December stretch, it probably wasn't as good. But I think in recent games, especially in the third period during those comebacks, it's been what we've been used to.
Yeah.
But again, hard for me to comment on that with a headset. And I keep my headset pretty loud. I like to hear the two of us. I like to keep us loud because you feel like you're part of that energy. I keep the effects mic up, which is some of the sounds from around ice level. So I'm probably the last person in the building to ask about that because I can't really hear what's going on aside from in our small booth.
Fair enough. Let me switch the question. What? Go.
No, go. You go ahead.
I was gonna say, when you have your headset on, which atmosphere this year or last season has been the hardest to hear yourself think? Like, which one is a difficult one to do a game in?
I'm so tuned in, zoned in that I don't really hear the stuff going on around me. Really, I keep it pretty loud, and I like to, you want to hear if the puck hits the post. We have mics all around the glass and the board, so you can hear a lot of that stuff. Thanks to our great audio engineer, Chris Matchkowski. He keeps it pretty high. So I'm pretty much focused in on that stuff.
Yeah, well, I could tell you a good Kenny story, Jonny, and to the audience. I think it was the first time I ever worked with Kenny on a broadcast. We did I think it might have been a game 6 or maybe a game 6.
I think it was a game 7, right? Bruins Maple Leafs.
Right. So it was a game
No
7
way.
Bruins Maple Leafs. And
Wow.
Kenny and I had been friends for some time at this point. But I've never actually done a broadcast with Kenny. And listen, we've had people in the chat chime in today, Kenny, and say, I wish Kenny Albert would narrate my life. You have one of those voices that, you could tell me how the paint is drying on my wall and it sounds exciting. I mean, you and a few other people across the spectrum of broadcasting have it. So, we do our little rehearsal, but the building's not really loud yet when we do our rehearsal. And then, as Kenny said, the building gets really loud going into pregame. So I have to turn my headset all the way up to make sure that I can hear Kenny really well. Well, we get into the open of the show and Kenny Albert's booming voice, that's just like on these surround sound headphones that we wear, it caught me a little bit off guard. Like I should have been ready for it, but I wasn't, Kenny. And I had this sort of moment of like, I got caught because I've just listened to you do sports for so many years, whether it's NFL, you've done so many Eagles games over the year, whether it's hockey. I forgot, like, oh, wait, you're working. You have to talk next. I just got caught listening to you, Kenny. And I know I've told you this story before, Kenny, but I don't know if I've ever told it on the air. So I can sort of understand what Kenny's talking about, Jonny, with turning up the headset. And then, you have Kenny's voice and that was a cool moment for me. Like I can really remember it too. Like the first time I got to do a game with Kenny, which was pretty cool. But obviously, Kenny, you're doing these games around the NHL. And I feel like every year, as we get down the stretch and you guys start doing not just Wednesdays, but then you're doing the weekend game as well, certain teams just look different. There have been times where it's been Vegas. There have been times where, this year it's been Washington. But I'm curious from your point of view, like you do these national games, so it's not just the Rangers that you see. Is there a team that you feel like, maybe it's one in the East and one in the West that just feel different to you? Like you're looking at this game and you're going, okay, like this is a team I expect to see playing in May, in June, because I feel like right now there's a lot of parity in the middle and the bottom, but I feel like there's definitely a couple of top heavy teams.
Yeah, there certainly are. And our crew with Eddie Olczyk and Brian Boucher, and I know you guys had Boucher on recently. We've done a lot of West games over the last few years, especially in the playoffs. And when you get teams like Colorado and Vegas and Edmonton, when they rev it up, they feel a little bit different. We've had a number of games involving those teams this year. We did the Colorado Edmonton playoff series a couple of years ago. We've done some Vegas playoff series. So, those three, when you look at some of the superstar players they have, it feels a little different when you work those games. But there are so many good teams this year, so many good stories. You look at Washington and Winnipeg, and I haven't seen either of those teams in person this year yet, but you have to admire what those teams have done. New Jersey's really upgraded. Carolina's always there. You guys talked about the Rangers last year. There was certainly a different feel, setting franchise records for wins and points, and their power play was on fire throughout the season. So you had that feel with them last year. Certainly Florida, again, one of the top teams in the league, and so impressed with what they've been able to do, going to the final 2 years ago and then winning it last year. It's not easy to get back, right, after you lose. We hadn't seen that in a long time, I think, since Pittsburgh, and 2008-9 was the last time a losing team in the Stanley Cup final went back. Dallas always seems to be there in the West. We had them in the conference final last year. I don't want to leave anybody out, but we'll see if the Maple Leafs this year can make a deep run. They've been a team that obviously has had high expectations, and now they have Craig Berube behind the bench. The goaltending's been real good during the regular season, so they'll certainly be an intriguing teams to watch during the playoffs. Tampa Bay, you can never rule them out. So I probably just named half the teams in the league.
Yeah,
but
pretty much 16 teams.
Like I said, we've done a lot of West games. So, Colorado, Edmonton, Vegas, when they're at their height and revving it up, they certainly have a different feel.
And Kenny, I want to change topics just for, a little bit here, because while we have you, I see it behind you. Your book, A Mic for All Seasons, obviously it talks about your 30 years of broadcasting and all your incredible stories. And I know it's been a little bit over a year since the book was published. Wondering what you've made of just the whole experience, publishing a book and the feedback you've gotten. And then, on top of that, I do want to ask a follow-up question and just say, is there anything that you haven't done yet that you still have on the bucket list? Because your career has been, incredible. And obviously, there are stories that carry on for a lifetime.
Well, the book was a lot of fun. And Colby, you mentioned that Bruins Maple Leafs game we worked. So you're listed in the appendix where I have the list of all my color analysts. Jaffe's on that list. We worked, I filled in on 2 or 3 Islander games when Billy was the Islanders analyst on MSG. Johnny, you didn't
remember everyone.
Hopefully, we'll do a game together someday, right?
You wrote that in the inner chapter of the book you
worked with on college games. So it was, a project that I thought about doing for a long time. Never really had the time. Felt like I had a lot of stories that I wanted to get out there, and also pay it forward to young broadcasters who I meet with every summer. I'm a guest speaker at 3 or 4 broadcasting camps every year, and the kids all ask great questions. So I have a chapter in there that, kind of goes over a lot of those questions, and I give advice to young broadcasters, travel stories, Olympic stories about each sport that I've been involved in, and much, much more. So it was a lot of fun. It came out, like you said, a little over a year ago, and we had some events last September, October, November back in 2023, and did a lot of interviews discussing the book and telling some of the stories. And I really love when I run into people who picked up the book and had a chance to read it, just what they took out of it. So always enjoy hearing from folks, whether it's friends or strangers. And, Colby, you mentioned the game we did, and, listening when I first started at the top of the broadcast. But along those lines, there's an audio book coming out soon. I did it myself. And
I think it's out already. My brother-in-law is listening to it.
Is that right? Because that's a scoop. If it's out already, I didn't even know that it was out already. So
I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, my brother-in-law is listening to it.
You're the first person that's told me that it's actually out. But I had to record it, believe it or not. They said the best place to record, back in the day, you'd have to go to a studio, but now you could do it at home. There's such great equipment, out there that you can use. So they told me, the audio expert said the best place to record, if you could go into a closet, because the way the sound bounces off the clothing. Mm-hmm. So I actually spent about a week in one of the closets here at my house. I had a stand set up, and the the iPad so I could read the book, off the iPad, off the PDF, and believe it or not, set up in my closet, and that's where we recorded. That's where I recorded the audiobook.
I mean, it would have to be your voice. Like, you're not just any normal guy. Like, you have a sound.
No, I wanted it. Yeah, no, I wanted it to be my voice. One thing I didn't mention earlier, two of the, greatest people that I've ever gotten to know, during my time broadcasting, Wayne Gretzky and Walt Clyde Frazier, were so kind to participate and write the forwards for my book. And you guys know Joe Tollison, the public address announcer for Ranger games. He was kind enough to voice the forwards. It would have been a little awkward for me to read those in my voice when they're talking about me. So, Joe has such a great voice, and he's done audiobooks before through the years. So he loaned his voice to the forwards, reading the words written by Wayne Gretzky and Clyde Frazier.
Jonny, you're going to have to tell me where I can get this this audiobook, because I'm in the car a lot. So you're gonna have to share that with us. So and is that just something you can get on like Apple Podcasts or is there like an audiobook app?
It's on Spotify.
Okay, so you can get it right. So you can
there
buy
you go.
It right on
Breaking news.
Good. I love it.
I knew it was sometime around late January, early February, but breaking news, Jonny.
I was going to say, I went in the car with my brother-in-law like last week, and it popped up on the screen.
Yeah, well, I spent a lot of time in the car, Kenny, so that I'm gonna have to go through the book now in audio form. Like I said, that'll be really cool. Was it hard to do that?
I don't want you to get distracted while you're driving.
Yeah, no, it's all right. I can do it now. I mean, we usually have our long conversations when I'm in the car anyway, right? So
very true.
It says 8 hours, 9 minutes, just for the record.
Yeah, so that's like 2 weeks of driving for me. I probably spend that much time in the car. Do you how hard was that to do? Like, what's that? I understand you gave us a visual of of where you did it, but like, what is the process for doing an audiobook? Is it like one chapter at a time? Is it one page? Like, how do you break that up and go through it?
Yeah, I had never done it before. So the folks at the audiobook company gave me instructions and set up the recording device for me. But they basically said you could do a chapter at a time. And the first 2 chapters are the longest. So, it took more time, I think, to get through those. Some of the other chapters towards the end are shorter. And then they said, if you make a mistake, clap. That would be their cue when they were editing,
like a cut,
to know that I was redoing the last sentence or the last paragraph. So there are 12 or 13 chapters. It was probably 20 different files on the audio device. It took about a week. It took a little quicker than I expected because when you get in there and get on a roll, you keep going. You don't want you want your voice to stay strong. So if I felt like my voice was tailing off a little bit, I would stop for the day. But I think I did about probably about 2 hours a day for 5 days and got on a roll and got the thing done within a week.
That's absolutely amazing. Well, Kenny, I know you got to go catch a flight here and go call a New York Knicks game tonight. Nobody does more sports than you. We learned about water polo today, even. So we greatly.
So did I didn't know that much about it. I didn't know that much about water polo 2 months before the Olympics, but a lot of research. Had some great people that I was able to talk to and learned a new sport along the way. And I know the first question was about the 4 nations. Really looking forward to that. Our crew has the 2 games in Boston next Monday. So it'll be Canada, Finland, and then the United States and Sweden at night on TNT. Our other terrific crew, Brendan Burke, Darren Pang, and Jackie Redmond, they'll have the game in Montreal this Wednesday. ESPN has the other games, and then we'll be there for the 2 in Boston next Monday.
Yeah. Well, and all the Rangers fans in our chat, and we do have a pretty good Rangers following because of Jonny. They're all hoping that at some point they'll get some news about next season and what could be coming down the pike. Obviously, Sam Rosen is retiring. There's a lot of speculation about what may happen. We'll wait until there's something to know, and then certainly we'll reconnect with you, Kenny, as we always like to try to do. So safe travels today. We look forward to seeing you on the Four Nations on Monday in Boston. Hopefully Johnny's there and he can come and bring you guys some coffees or something up to the booth. Although you're not a coffee drinker, right?
Nothing
Kenny?
for Ben. Nothing for Ben.
Not a coffee drinker.
No, Kenny's not a coffee drinker.
A lot of Diet Cokes.
Diet Coke. And you're right. Nothing for Ben. He gets absolutely nothing, and he'll like it. So Kenny, you're the best. Safe travels today, and we'll see you on the TV soon.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate the kind words from the Ranger fans. The Ben that you guys referenced is our great statistician, Ben Bulma, for those viewers not aware. And thanks for having me on. Have a great week, and hopefully we can do it again soon.
Thanks, right, Kenny. Give Tyler Murray a hug, too.
Will do.
We love Tyler.
Yeah. Awesome stuff, Colby. Busy day. Beanpot final tonight. Four Nation stuff going on. It's going to be a wild week just with where we go in conversation and everything. I think we're going to have Brant Berglund back on the show this week. He's got some stuff loaded up for the Four Nations that he wants to present to everybody. But bear with us in the chat because, it's going to bounce around a lot with no hockey being played, obviously, tomorrow morning. Maybe we'll talk about the Beanpot final tonight. Anything else that you want to say before we kind of get to our next order of business here?
Let's just, because I've seen Jeremiah put this in the chat like 3 or 4 times, so I'll just touch on it. Obviously Jeremiah is always here with us. So when
I saw you on a show last week.
I did do his show. He was kind enough to do it 1 hour later. Here's the thing. I asked him, do you guys do it live or is it pre-recorded? Do you mind pushing it back an hour? And he didn't say pushing our recording. Like, I wasn't sure, but it sounds like they actually delayed it an hour for me because I was in the car and I needed, so I got on the show. We did a little college hockey with those guys on Friday. But what he has been putting in the chat, he's talking about something that he read on Yardbreaker. The headline of it is Rangers potentially facing serious tampering consequences during the JT Miller trade. Here's what I would say is, first off, I think Yardbreaker is a little, they're usually just sourcing their articles from other people. And the original post for this is from someone named Blades of Steel and a website named Blades of Steel. And when you start to actually read the article, it sounds like this is just completely fabricated. It's a little bit of a reach.
I'm looking at it right now.
I'm reading through it. Listen, players and players' wives, a player can call their friends 7 days a week and say, I want you to come play here with me. Like, a player can even go ask his GM, can you trade for this guy? It's not real. The wives being friends, the wives traveling to see each other, all that stuff is that's totally normal. So I got to tell you, Jeremiah, I don't think there's much here. I think this is somebody looking for clicks, in my opinion. Again, JT Miller's agents were involved in helping facilitate this trade. Remember, he had no movement, so he had to also be a part of this trade. So it's not crazy to think that he would have texted Vincent Trocheck, his best friend, and said, they asked me to waive my trade. They're working on a deal, blah, blah, blah. So I just wanted to address it, Jeremiah, because I saw you put it in the chat a couple of times. You made us aware of it, but as we're looking into it, I would tell you that there's nothing to this whatsoever. Even, the article is kind of tricky because it says, according to the Athletics, Peter Baugh, so they're trying to source people who might be actually be credible people. But interpersonal relationships behind the scenes have nothing to do with tampering. Players talk about these things all the time. Tampering would be if somebody who worked for the New York Rangers reached out to him and said, we want you to waive your no trade clause to come here without permission to speak to him, whatever. So just wanted to address that, Jeremiah, because you put it in the chat a couple of times. I don't expect to see anything further or reliable about this, Johnny.
Yeah, no, I just was reading through it as you were kind of talking, and it doesn't seem like it's anything all that serious. Just stories about the friendship, which obviously
looks like a clickbait headline is what it looks like. That's how it reads to me. So
I guess that's how they do their business over there too. I'm not really too familiar with Yard Barker.
What I
But
say,
yeah, let's
yard
get into
breaker. I thought you
okay,
said
great.
yard
Yeah,
breaker. Yard
no, it's all
barker.
good.
Okay.
Let's get into our Bet365 bet of the night, and we're going away from the NHL tonight because the Beanpot Championship will be on. I'll be watching it on NHL Network, and Colby's gonna hate me but love me for saying this because we are betting against Boston University and taking Boston College on the money line with some heavy juice at -190. And I know Colby's brain is saying, well, now BU is probably going to win because my pick is Boston College, even though we went three. I know you don't get the overtime loss for betting, but 3-1 last week. Columbus couldn't pull it out in overtime on Thursday night, unfortunately. That was a crazy goal, too. Ingram came out, played the puck, took a crazy bounce off the boards, and Dylan Gunther got his own rebound to win it for Utah. But we're going Boston College. I just think they're too loaded. Mike Net could be the difference maker, but Gabe Perreault, Ryan Leonard, James Higgins, Gasso, Yeldy,
100%.
Manetti, like they're too good to me. Fortescue, who we talked about earlier.
Listen, I totally agree. I think it's a huge uphill climb for BU. I think that it's going to have to be the goaltender probably standing on his head, and you're probably going to need an off night from Jacob Fowler if that's the case. So check that out tonight. It's a great rivalry. It's one of the best there is. There's a couple in college hockey that there's a couple in the East, there's a couple in the West, there's a couple in the Central, the Midwest, I would say, that are, whether it's Michigan State,
they played
whether
this weekend, right?
Minnesota, North Dakota, BU, BC. Yeah, they split this weekend. Michigan won the first one. Michigan State turned around and won the second one.
That was cool on Saturday with Dylan Duke and Tyler Duke. They play, Dylan Duke scores his first goal for Tampa in Little Caesars, and Tyler scores for Michigan, later that day. It was really cool seeing all the Michigan players like in their game day suits at the game watching Dylan. That was awesome. That doesn't really happen ever.
Yeah, it was a great coincidence. It was a long day of hockey for the family, and good for Duke, who gets called up and gets his goal. I liked him when he played at Michigan. I really did. I thought he was a good player for them. I think he was at least a 3 or 4 year player at Michigan, and he was probably played in 3 Frozen Fours. I mean, Michigan had a run of getting there every year. They're on a run really since the Boston Frozen Four. Like they've been around every year. So, that's what we got. We got Beanpot, and then we got Four Nations. I think tomorrow we'll spend a little time talking Four Nations. I think we should talk about how the rosters finalized, because the rosters, I think they have to finalize at some point today. And there's even some talk about Sidney Crosby. Like, they don't know what his availability is going to be. So, it's going to be Canada rolling the dice. If they keep him with hopes he'll play later. But again, you've seen some guys like Pietrangelo drops out, and then he plays 20 plus minutes a night. Quinn Hughes is now out of the tournament. Jake Sanderson comes back in. Again, we'll dissect these rosters tomorrow. I think we'll spend a good chunk of time tomorrow really, really looking at this stuff.
Colby Armstrong will be on with us tomorrow, actually, as well. Spoke to Colby yesterday. He plans on being our guest for tomorrow. And just to clarify, for the roster being finalized, it is 5 p.m. today, from what it looks like. So, but I do see from Darren Drager, as long as there's progress, Canada may opt to keep Crosby and gamble on his availability game by game. So I don't know if they would take him off the roster. He is going to Montreal, but just wanted to clarify there. So that's all really there is for tonight. Colby, I'm going to pass it over to you to close out the show.
I mean, listen, it'll be really interesting if Crosby does drop out. If today, because if he drops out, we'll have to know by 5 o'clock today. So let me ask you this question, and this is kind of tough to just throw at you right at the end of the show. If you lose Sidney Crosby, who is a centerman, okay, where are you turning? And who are you turning to as far as a centerman goes in the National Hockey League?
You're going to be so happy with me right now. Macklin Celebrini. If you can't have the older guy that's carried the game for so many years, bring in the younger guy who's the next generation. I think Macklin is deserving of it. I think Macklin is a great personality to highlight, and I think he's an unbelievable young player to help this thing have some more popularity? Who would you pick? I see
Well,
Mark
I mean,
Scheifele,
listen,
obviously.
yeah, I think Mark Scheifele is probably next up. That would be
But
my
I'm
guess.
thinking like marketing
I
and all, and
listen,
all that stuff.
I agree. Here's what I would say. I would say Celebrini would be an amazing pick because you're kind of getting him ready, hoping he's going to play in the Olympics next year. But I think it would be hard to pass on Mark Scheifele.
Yeah.
I really do. And if my heart says Macklin, but my head says Scheifele, is probably how I feel about that. But
it'd be pretty disrespectful to pick Macklin over Scheifele, probably.
yeah, but I also think Crosby's going to play. Like, I think they're going to roll the dice and gamble with him because I think it's Sidney Crosby. It's not just a regular guy who's injured.
Also, like, looking at comments in the chat, if I'm Mark Scheifele, I don't know if I'd want to go. Winnipeg is pushing for the Stanley Cup right now. Why risk it? Let a guy like Macklin who
you want to go.
Really? Because I don't know, man.
You
like,
do.
The team,
you want to go.
That are going for it.
I'm sorry, Johnny. You want to go. You want to wear that jersey
already.
Most of these guys have, of course he does, but most of these guys have never got a chance to play in these types of environments because the NHL hasn't been in the Olympics the last 2 Olympics. That's 8 years. And then even going back further than that, because the last Olympics would have been 4 years from that point. I think Sochi is the last time the NHL went to the Olympics, right? In 2000 was it 12 or 14?
14.
Yeah. So a lot of these guys have not had the chance. So I think 100%. Even if you're a late add to the roster, you're going to go. We'll see what happens. Listen, I think USA did a nice job of bringing a couple of younger guys. Maybe you could have picked some different guys, right? Like you could have made an argument against Brock Faber, for example. But I think it's smart that USA is teasing some of the next generation of the superstars. The other thing I want to say that I heard, so you've got Mike Eruzione who went up to have dinner with the team. They also invited Johnny Gaudreau's dad up there to have dinner with the team. The expectation would have been that Johnny Gaudreau would have been on this team. So super classy move that's not gotten any, PR attention. Probably because they weren't doing it for attention. They were just doing it because it was a nice gesture for a tough situation, obviously for the family. So anyways, I know you've got something you want to get in there and talk about. So again, tomorrow we'll go heavy Four Nations. We can address some of the trade rumors. Adam, I see you're asking about Tarasenko. Tomorrow is Tuesday. So hopefully when you let me know, Johnny, what time Colby Armstrong's coming in, we'll check with Frank. I don't know what his travel schedule is like this week as far as when he's leaving, but we will try to get Frank on as well this week. So do yourselves a favor, save your trade questions for when Frank is coming on. He's obviously always the best source for those types of things. So we'll circle back to your question, Adam, at some point this week, when we either have Frank on or Jeff on or someone like that. So go ahead, Johnny.
Just wanted to give a quick update about what our Daily Faceoff crew is up to for the Four Nations. And the Daily Faceoff live crew is hitting the road and going live on location from Four Nations, bringing you exclusive coverage straight from the tournament. From February 10th to the 20th, they got live shows every weekday, breaking down the biggest stories, key matchups, and all the action as it unfolds. They'll be watching some of the league's best players go head-to-head representing their countries, battling for international glory in a tournament packed with intensity and high-stakes hockey. So don't miss a second. Subscribe to the Daily Faceoff YouTube channel where you can find me and Colby every single morning, and follow on all social platforms to stay locked in. They'll be bringing you insider analysis, on-the-ground coverage, and maybe even a little chaos because, let's be real, it's international hockey. So Daily Faceoff live on location from Four Nations, February 10th to the 20th. That's going to wrap up our show for today. We got a lot going throughout the week. We'll keep you posted on guests, not only tomorrow, but Wednesday and Thursday as well. I'll be in Montreal Wednesday afternoon, so I'll be doing the show live from Montreal Thursday morning. Going to be a busy week. We're actually going to get to the chat a lot this week as well. So keep the energy going in the chat. We'll answer all your questions like Colby alluded to before. But any final thoughts before we send it off, Colby?
No, and next week we're gonna have a Friday show too.
Yeah.
So you know that we're a ways away from that, obviously, but just put it on your radar. It's not this week; it'll be next week, and we'll have a Friday show. But other than that, great guest today. Thanks to Billy Jaffe, and check out Morning Brew if you are a Bruins fan. Him and Andrew Raycroft do a great job. They get them out quite frequently. Wherever you get your podcasts. Obviously can't turn on the TV without seeing Kenny Albert. My wife was very surprised last night when she said, "Is Kenny doing the game tonight?" I said, "No, he actually gets the Super Bowl off," which she was like, "Oh, that must be nice for him." I said, "I'm sure he's got prep work for some other game." And sure enough, he's got a Knicks game. So as always, we appreciate you guys. Give us a like on this episode. I've noticed that this is there's not been a ton of likes on this episode to this point. So make sure, if you haven't already, please give us that like. Subscribe to the YouTube channel for Daily Faceoff with all of the different content and the different shows that we have this week on the Daily Faceoff for the different events happening with Four Nations. And other than that, you know the drill. We'll see you right back here 9 a.m. tomorrow.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that